And isn't that the thing? You know, you don't realize when you're in the middle of it. You don't realize when you're in the middle of a run of 3 out of 4 championships that, man, this is pretty special. Because as an athlete and as a competitor, it's always the next week, the next game, the next practice, the next meeting. That's how we always thought about it. So looking back onto those 3 championship teams, 01, 03, 04, there are certain things that I learned from those championship seasons that I'll take with me for the rest of my life that helped me be a better person and a better teammate. In 2001, I think that's when the New England Patriots truly became a team. And that's easy to say. You know, there's every cliche you can talk about. There's no I in team, all this stuff and all this and all that, every cliche you want to talk about. But how do you really prove that to yourself? Prove that to yourself, to the organization you work for, to your team. There was one player that taught me this, that taught all of us what it was like to be unselfish. And his name was Drew Bledsoe. Does anyone remember that name? Because there were quarterbacks that played for New England before Tom Brady. There were. And Drew Bledsoe, if you remember, was the franchise. He had every passing record, touchdown, probably every interception record too. But had every passing record there was, right? But there was a game versus the New York Jets in which Drew dropped back to pass, and he rolled out to his right. And there was a Jet linebacker. Anybody remember that name? Mo Lewis. Now, Drew was never the most fleet of foot. He wasn't the best athlete, so I remember being on the sideline just like this. Get out of bounds, Drew. Get out of bounds. Get out of bounds. Get out of bounds. Bam! Here came Mo Lewis, knocked him out on the ground. And I said, Drew, that's not the way I wanted you to get out of bounds. But Drew ended up being hurt, and in comes Tom Brady, right? And everyone knows how that story goes. But what happened to the guy that was on the ground? What happened to Drew Bledsoe? This is what people forget. Drew Bledsoe had to rehabilitate himself from serious injuries to get back to play football. And when he came back to football, he was told by his boss, Bill Belichick, we don't need you anymore. How would you take that? If you're a part of a corporation, a business, you're gone because you're sick for a couple weeks, and you come back expecting to do the exact same thing you did when you left, and your boss tells you, stand to the side. We've got this other kid now that we think is going to do a better job. What would you do? Would you quit? Would you think about quitting? That'd be a tough situation to face. And that's what Drew Bledsoe was in. But Drew decided to be a good teammate to Tom Brady and help mold him into a quarterback that helped us win a world championship. Now, of course, this was tough for Drew. I was a good friend of Drew, and yes, he did think about quitting. He did think about all the things that he had done for the organization and wondered why he wasn't getting the opportunity to play again, but he continued to be unselfish. And it's funny how things work out for people who do the right thing for their team, for their business, for their organization. AFC Championship game versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. What happened to Tom Brady? Tom Brady went down with a sprained ankle, and in came Drew Bledsoe. Drew Bledsoe led us to the Super Bowl that year in the AFC Championship game. Yeah. Who did you throw the touchdown pass to? Yeah, very good. Yes, I knew Lowell was good. I knew it. But that's an example of being unselfish in a time of stress that I took with me. And Drew moved on to Buffalo, to Dallas. But that lesson stayed with a lot of the players in that locker room. So when it happened to us, and there was someone else that came in that was supposed to help us and maybe take some plays away from us, it was okay. Because it was all about winning. Because of that lesson Drew taught us. Also in 01, there was a moment that I'll never forget. And that was the pregame team introductions before the Super Bowl. I think that was a moment where we showed the entire world what we meant. Now, let me tell you what the most exhilarating thing as an NFL player is. One of the most exhilarating things is that pregame introduction. When you're in that helmet and they announce your name, they announce your college, they announce your position. You have your helmet off and you run out. It's sort of like individual validation. Tedy Bruschi, linebacker from the University of Arizona, number 54, and then you run out. It's sort of like your moment. A moment you never have in team sport to really get validation that I've made it. Multiply that by like 1,000. And that's the Super Bowl. That's the Super Bowl introductions. And we told the networks all that week that we would not do that we wanted to forego that and be introduced as a team. And they sort of didn't believe us. And we were in the tunnel. I remember the guy with the headset on, he says, guys, they're still coming out as a team. We've got to do something about this. They're still coming out as a team. Because no one had ever done that before. And I remember, I think it was Pat Summerall who had the call. Here are your AFC champion New England Patriots who wish to be introduced as a team. The first time that had ever been done in the Super Bowl. And we were introduced. And that's the first time I really felt shock in the stadium that they really couldn't believe that we would put the team first in that setting. I looked over to the St. Louis Rams players, and they had that look like, man, we should have thought of that. We should have thought of that. Being unselfish and putting the team first. That's what I remember about 01. 03. And now you're thinking, 01, 03. What happened to 02? Did the Patriots not play football in 02? And we sort of didn't play football in 02. But having won multiple championships, there's something I've learned. And a lot of players can't tell you this because you need more than one. But what you truly learn about who you are after you've won your first championship. After. I think we're all here because of the success we've had over the past year. You've had a great year. But what will you do after you've been recognized? After you've achieved that world championship? Because the funny thing happened. There is a true saying about teams that sort of have a Super Bowl hangover. You think about things and you sort of lose yourself. You sort of reprioritize what's important, what's not. You start thinking about a contract. You start thinking about endorsements. Well, this guy is the same player, this guy is the same type of player I am, and he's getting paid more. Well, I think I should get paid more. And that's when you start to lose your focus. And that's basically what we did in 02. But the 03 team did something that was even tougher, and that was remember who you were. Forget about the past. Forget about what you did 2 years ago. No matter how great it was, winning the world championship, forget about it and move on. Remember what you did to get there. And then stay up there. That's what the 03 team did. We go in 04. 04, and this was our chance to win 3 championships in 4 years. Put us up there with the Packers of the 60s, the Steelers of the 70s, the Niners of the 80s, the Cowboys of the 90s. This was our challenge to embrace being great. This was our chance. I remember a friend of mine, he played linebacker, Roman Pfeiffer. You remember that name? Roman Pfeiffer, number 95. Great player. We were on an airplane coming back from a preseason game, and he said, Teddy, come over here and sit next to me. I want to talk to you. And he said, do you realize what it would mean if we won a championship this year? And that's where we recognized what we could achieve and who we could be. And amongst ourselves in that locker room, that's what we talked about that entire year, about being one of those great teams, about being one of the greatest teams there ever had been. And that's what we achieved in 04. That's a pretty good run.